Good morning. We're on 10:15, so we can get started. Dynamo, as a Dynamo advisory board member, I'd like to welcome you to the session this morning. I'm delighted to introduce someone I've known and had the privilege of knowing for a few years, Stewart Hogg, who is head of cyber resilience and an experienced business consultant with Waterstons, who don't sell books, by the way. They are a business, IT and cybersecurity consultancy headquartered in Durham with an office in Sydney, so open for 24/7 support these days. Waterston's mantra is helping clients to build a better business, more secure and more resilient. And in my experience, that's exactly what they do. So over to you, Stu. There you go. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sue. Very, very kind words, and thanks for the introduction. And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the session on developing your business resilience strategy. I can see we've got a few others. I've got a few screens going on here, but I'm going to keep my attention on you, and hopefully you can see the slides. Just a few points of just practicalities. If you double click on the slides on the screen, I think they get a bit bigger for you if you want to see them. And please do put some questions into the chat box as we go through, and I'd be happy. I'm going to try and stop early just so we can make this interactive, get a few questions in, and make this as useful for you as possible. And firstly, I should say just a thanks to the Dynamo guys as well. It's amazing that they've been able to put this virtual conference on at such short notice and responding very much exemplifying what we're talking about today, which is being resilient in the face of disruption. As Sue says, I'm Stu Hogg, and I'll just give myself a quick introduction while we've got a few other people joining us. So, as Sue says, I'm head of cyber resilience, and she's nicely summarised who we are as a business. When I joined the business 10 years ago, we were 50 people based in Durham in the northeast, still very much our home. But now we've branched out. We've got offices in London and Glasgow, and earlier this year we opened our Sydney office in Australia, which was great to go global as an organisation. And we do a few of the things you see on the screen there. And my particular role in the puzzle is to lead our cyber resilience team and ensure that our clients are protected against that evolving threat of cybercrime and the cyber threat landscape. But today I'm going to speak to you on developing that resilience strategy. So this is what we're going to cover. The subtitle is Survive and Thrive in an Uncertain World, and obviously very topical with what's going on at the moment with the COVID pandemic. So we're going to cover why invest in resilience, why is it of a particular value to us now. I want to pose to you a new definition of resilience, which is informed by some thinking we've been doing with the British Standards Institute. I'm going to outline a strategic approach to resilience and maybe get you thinking about what elements should be in your own business resilience strategy. And then consider, how do we embark on that resilience journey? Just a warning that we will get interactive later in the presentation, so if you have a smartphone or you can open it in another tab ready, we will be using Slido. I'll put the number up again later in the presentation just so that you can see it there, and we're going to just pose a few questions throughout to get you engaging with the session. So without further ado, let's dive into the detail. So why invest in resilience? Now, I've started to do a bit more thinking about this more recently, because while cybersecurity is one component, I've previously helped quite a few of our clients think about their wider strategy. How can they become a more resilient organization using the resources that they have? And of course, the elephant in the room, and we've already talked about it in this conference so far, is the fact that COVID hit the world in an unprecedented way. And obviously that's affected not just the business world, but also individual. And we hope that your families and those close to you are safe at this time. But it's a new reality, and that cliche is coming forward now, isn't it? The new normal that we'll all be emerging into. We won't snap back to how the world used to be. And that means in our professional and business lives, there's going to be a new way of working as well. So resilience is very much part of how do we deal with that, and what if something similar were to happen in the future. And of course, there is an economic component to that. We've seen the Chancellor up at the daily briefings telling us about what's happening in the economy. And unfortunately, for the short term, there will be some impact to our economy, which then means that we need to think, well, how are we going to see out this period? How do we innovate? How do we adapt? How do we change our approach to make sure that we will be here and not be a business that unfortunately could go to the wall? So resilience becomes critical in a survival sense. But not just that, it also gives us competitive advantage. In a competitive marketplace, being resilient and demonstrating that your business will be here for the long term will win you influence. So these are some of the reasons that I guess are more in our minds now than they were before. And I just want to back up this topic with just some statistics that The Economist did a study on resilience a few years back now, but some really interesting insights. And at the time, they surveyed a wide proportion of business leaders who said that 80% of them saying that resilience and thinking about it more was essential to long-term growth. 61% of that study saying that it would lead to competitive advantage. But here's the interesting bit. Only 29% of those surveyed said that resilience practices were embedded in their business today. So it's an area we think is really important, but it's also one we're quite self-aware of, that we're maybe not there yet, and maybe we need to go further. I want to show you a bit of an interesting video, just a bit of a time lapse here about the winners and losers in the global scheme. Hopefully that's coming across okay there. It might be a bit jumpy on the video. But essentially here you can see that the year is increasing in the bottom right, and we're looking at the 15 biggest brands in the world and their respective value. So no surprise there, early 2000s, we've got the likes of Coca-Cola, Microsoft, IBM, but also some people that you maybe are less familiar, you've not seen for a while. What about Nokia? Nokia in 2007 were the 5th biggest company in the world. Now look who's coming up from behind the pack. We've got Google working their way through the ranks. They're now on to 2010. Nokia, interestingly, falling away. And now we've got Apple emerging, 2011, onto the scene. And suddenly, watch this, shooting up and suddenly becoming the world's biggest brand almost overnight, combined with Google. Those traditional brands of Coca-Cola and IBM falling away. Now you're going to have a new player, Amazon, coming onto the scene here. I feel like I'm... and Amazon come up, and very shortly we're going to end this picture with Amazon, the 3rd biggest brand in the world. So just a bit of a time lapse there, an interesting picture, and it will be really interesting if we would continue that picture forward the next few years. What will the biggest brands be in a few times? Think about that picture you see in front of you now. Where are Nokia? That's a good question. Previously one of the world's biggest companies, but by 2018, nowhere to be seen on the top 15 of the winners and losers. So when I talk about resilience, there's a short-term component to this message, but there's also a long-term one about, will our brands be here in 15, 20, 50 years to come? And I think resilience unlocks some of the answers to that question. Now, I want to try a bit of interactivity. So we're going to go over to do a little bit of a Slido poll and just see if this works. Please do bear with us because this is a live demonstration and things might go wrong. But if you've got a smartphone or another tab, I want to just get some words out of what resilience means to you. So you can go to that web address, Slido. All the information is anonymized. We're not storing any information, and put in that number there. And what should happen if I press this button on my phone is that hopefully you can see that. Is that we're going to jump into Slido, and I can see there are 30 people in the session, so 29 people at the moment. So 29 of us. It'd be good to get the number somewhere close to that. If you want to pull out your phone, go onto that Slido link there, slido.com, and you can put in that number, and you should see this question appear. What does resilience mean to you? Now you can submit more than one word. See, we've got one reply already. That's great. If we're going to wait for a few, and then I'm going to reveal a bit of a word cloud just to see what is in people's heads when they think about resilience. 3, yep, here we go. 4, excellent. 6, okay, so yep, keep them coming. I'll give you another 30 seconds just to put in some words that come to mind when you think of resilience. What are the attributes? Think about those companies that were going up and down on the stock market top 15 there. What are the likes of the people who are the big players demonstrating? What are they doing that maybe others aren't? You can keep adding. I'm just going to reveal the word cloud so you can see what others are saying. Right, some interesting words happening here. Innovation. Wow, that's come out. The bigger the word, the more people have said it, and I love the fact that that's come up front and center. And obviously the likes of Apple, Amazon, Google, they exude innovation, don't they? We've got some other ones: opportunity, being proactives in there. Flexibility, excellent, and I think that's an incredible attribute, that we are in a changing world, aren't we? We know that flexibility is key. Embracing change, innovation. No, this is great. So you can sort of start to see the kind of key themes emerging there. I have to say, I'm really glad that those, particularly innovation, being innovative and being flexible, have come out. Adaptability, excellent. Have come out at the top of the poll there because they exemplify, I guess, the resilience thinking, which I think will drive us through into the future. So I'm going to just pause the word cloud there, and we're going to go back to our slides. And we'll have a few more questions for you slightly later in the presentation. So that's great. Everyone's got into Slido and had a look at that. So survival of the fittest, question mark, intentionally. Now, some of you might be familiar with the sort of that adage, you know, is it survival of the fittest? It's an old Darwinism, but it's actually a misquote by Darwin. And a paraphrase of Darwin's work actually states this: it's not the strongest that survives. The species that survives is the one that is best able to adapt and adjust to a changing environment in which it finds itself. Darwin's message was it's exactly not the strongest. It's the one that can best adapt. It's the one that can best be flexible. You know, we've already seen that through the word cloud. And I think that's the core element I want to bring out. I think we can be guilty when we hear the word resilience of thinking BCP plan, how are we going to survive the disaster? And that's one component. But if we haven't got that creative innovation, if we haven't got that adaptability, then we won't be here for the long term. So that's excellent. Let's move in then to what I want to start with in terms of defining our terms and bringing that thinking of adaptability, flexibility, and innovation into our definition of resilience. I'm pulling here from a British standard on resilience. It was published a few years back. I'm a bit of a standards guy. I consult on ISO 27001, all those sorts of good things. But this is really interesting here. The definition of resilience from the British standard is it's the ability of an organization to anticipate, prepare for, respond and adapt to incremental change and sudden disruption. Why? In order to survive and prosper. So that means not being like the Titanic on a course which takes forever to change direction, but actually being able to respond. Forgive the sci-fi reference, but a bit like this little Star Wars drone who can pivot really quickly and respond to the situation in the way that you need to. And I think getting that definition of resilience in our head is excellent. And obviously by the word cloud, many of you view it in that way already, which is great. And the other aspect is that we can survive and prosper. And so it's not just defensive, but it's actually opportunity. It's thriving, as we've put into the title of this seminar. And so this is the definition I want to unpack in a little bit more detail and explore a bit further. Just to contextualize that, a final bit, I want to take an example from recent times. And of course, as we know, COVID has impacted the world in quite significant ways. I don't know about you, I quite like my craft beer when it gets to the weekend. And they're an example of one industry which has been really impacted by the COVID crisis. Here's a headline from a few months ago: 82% drop in beer sales as COVID-19 lockdown hits the craft breweries. Of course, because the pubs are shut, and I'm sure many were rejoicing when the Prime Minister announced that that'll soon come to an end. But it's obviously hit that industry hard, and they've had to think about two options there. They could lock themselves down, go into hibernation. They could protect, maybe take full advantage of the furlough scheme, which is absolutely the right thing to do for a number of organizations. But is there a different way to approach these sorts of challenges? And I want to pull out the example of BrewDog. Now, BrewDog, you might have seen this in the news, when the crisis hit, they very quickly turned some of their operations to making hand sanitizer and publicly giving that away free of charge to organizations as the lockdown hit. A great bit of innovation that obviously helps them from a marketing point of view, but also helps that wider good of society. Not only that, but as you'll remember, there was a bit of a media flare with the whole Dominic Cummings story. And so 2 days after that story broke, BrewDog were straight into their online shop with the Barnard Castle eye test. And I thought it was genius. If you've been lucky enough to get a case of that, a little bit of history there. But hats off to the marketing department that saw that news breaking and very quickly positioned the product into the marketplace within 48 hours essentially for people to consume. And then only last week, BrewDog has started investigating the use of drones for their deliveries. That article, 17th of June, so hot off the press. Now you can kind of see here's two approaches to the craft beer industry. We could shut ourselves down and hibernate, or we can pursue that approach of adapting and innovating. And I think they're an example of just what we can all take the essence of into our own organizations. So I want to put it to you that innovation is perhaps the best form of defense when it comes to resilience. And I love the fact that you've already made my point by putting innovation front and center of the word cloud we did earlier, which is great. And so when we think about our strategies, it's maybe not survival of the fittest, it is ultimately thinking about how do we change and adapt our organizations in this evolving and uncertain world, and putting that front and center. That means no longer having the 5-year approach that's never going to change, but instead being really able to maneuver and change what we're prioritizing at the right time. I think it's underpinned by risk as well. Risk obviously can be positive and negative. So you can think about risk through the lens of opportunity. And that means it's not just survival, it's thriving or it's prospering, as we saw in that definition. It means that actually if we are those risk takers, if we do see that opportunity and we can pivot, maybe we can realize more benefit than our competitors, or perhaps take advantage of a marketing opportunity or another way that we can add value in our marketplace. And I guess that's really the mission of where we've been helping our clients in Waterstons, developing and implementing strategies to weather a storm and build a better business, which is our tagline. And we particularly do that using technology, but of course we consult across people, process, and technology domains. And it's only when they all come together that we find a strategy that really works, and I think is the answer as we go forward. And later in the presentation, I'm going to share with you a new resilience benchmarking tool that we've started to develop with a lot of thinking going on. It's an exciting and innovative area, resilience. And we've got that up as a SurveyMonkey. I'll give out the link later that's free to complete, and just do your own assessment of where you are. And we'll do a quick go as part of this presentation. So let's move a bit deeper. We've done the framing of resilience and the vision for the future. What should be in our strategic approach to resilience? What elements do we need to consider when we move into that? Well, I want to introduce you to a bit of a quadrant. This is something that we've helped to think about with the British Standards Institute, and we've added to this thinking a little bit. And I want to put to you that it's not just one element that makes up a resilient strategy, but it's actually multiple. So bear with me while I introduce this quadrant to you. If we plot a bit of our approach on two axes, the x-axis thinking about consistency, doing the same things really well, and flexibility, being able to change direction on the x-axis. And then we think about the kind of activities we do that are some are defensive, they're designed to stop bad things happening, like taking backups of our IT infrastructure or appraising risk. And some things are progressive, like putting forward a new service for our clients to consume. Now, if we plot this quadrant, we've designed this to have 4 elements that we think model resilience in businesses. So starting in the bottom left, protect, having an element of protecting your organization, which often in our view starts with doing the basics right. Certainly from a cyber resilience point of view, we regularly say it's not about buying the expensive tool necessarily, it's about doing the basics right, and then you can think about your wider strategy after that. Putting consistent and defensive things in to be resilient against that disaster scenario. In the bottom right, we have to have the ability to adapt. And those words coming through, the ability to respond, to evaluate, to monitor, and then to make decisions really quickly. And that time lag between getting the information and making the decision can be critical. In the top left, we've got optimize. And that might mean doing things differently, reducing waste, optimizing people, process, technology, using all these sorts of things at our disposal to then reinvest that resource in a value-adding capacity. And in the top right, we've got innovate, which might mean doing different things, diversifying, bringing new services to market. And I put it to you that it's not about doing any one of these things, but actually by modeling elements of all 4, that is the characteristics that make up a resilient organization. So what I want to do is just dive into each one of these in a bit more detail, and there'll be a quick poll to allow you to assess where your organization is at. So we'll step through each one. First of all, protect. I want you to think about this question. We've talked about it doing the basics right, but if I was to say your business is able to protect, it's able to protect its assets, its services, its people. And that might mean having the defensive controls designed to protect our critical systems and plans to keep them available in a disaster scenario. Then I'd like to put that question out on Slido in a minute and get your responses. But as I've said, it's doing this right can be a real critical component. And I want to use Amazon as an example of this. Earlier this year, Amazon was subject to the largest DDoS attack in history. Their service, the AWS platform that hosts lots of websites, was hit with 2.3 terabits per second of information. So lots of data designed to take down their systems. But Amazon, being the size they are and having the technology clout, invested such that that attack was rendered a null and void when it hit their systems, being able to spread out across the various defenses that they have. So they're a great example of protecting their service as well, so that they can go on doing the other elements. So Cyber Essentials is another example as you move into that. It's an area we regularly talk to our clients about. If you've not come across the Cyber Essentials program, it outlines, it's a government-backed scheme that outlines 5 core areas where you can make sure your organization is cyber secure. It's got the basics right. And the same logic extends to BCP, having a resilient supply chain, all these sorts of components. The key message is, with those solid foundations, the last point here, those breaks, if you will, that will allow you to go fast. Because if we don't have the basics in place, well, actually, we might be hit more than others when that unexpected event happens. So we're going to go over to you again and do another poll. If I press a button here, we should be able to go back to Slido, and you can consider that statement that I put on the slides there. My business is able to protect. We have the defensive controls designed to protect our critical services and have plans to keep them available in a disaster scenario. So think about that. This is all anonymized, but do you strongly agree? Agree? Maybe in the middle, neither agree or disagree? Disagree or strongly disagree? And what the same logic will be, we'll have for each of the 4. And again, it's just to get a sense of where our organizations are at. For those that have joined us recently, you'll see a little Slido link there. I think you can even hold your phone up to that QR code and you'll be taken to the poll. And that'll let you contribute to the survey. So there we go, 16, 17 responses. That's over half the people now. That's great. I'm just going to, you can keep adding. I'm just going to reveal where we're at. Okay, no, that's impressive. So, first of all, we've got no one so far that disagrees or strongly disagrees that they don't have the defensive controls in place, and that's excellent, because that's for us, that's the starting point. And making sure that you can weather the storm, see through the uncertain event. And obviously the majority of people agreeing. Maybe there's some room for improvement, but you know you've got levels of cover there, which is great. So that gives us a sense of where we're sitting at the moment. So let's remember those 45%, 30% agree and strongly agree. Okay, I'm going to just hide that one. Okay, so that's doing the basics right. If I move on to the next component, adapt, having the ability to respond. I'm going to put a poll question to you to say, do you have the agility within your people, process, and technology to respond to that disaster scenario? It's about that Darwin theory we covered earlier. Can you adapt in that changing environment? And on the ground, that means noticing and responding. So having governance, risk management committees, insight, the data at your fingertips to then be able to change direction. And a great example of this is Lego. I've got 2 little kids now, and they're on the Duplo stages, but one day we'll get to Lego, which I'm really looking forward to. And Lego is obviously a famous brand. It's been around for many decades. But in 2003, the firm was approaching bankruptcy. It really hit hard times, and they realized they'd actually over-innovated. There was too many product lines, too many different types of bespoke Lego. And so they had to respond to the new market. Less people were stocking physical Lego products. They only had a certain amount in their stores to keep it. And so in 2003, the company shifted their direction. They actually started doing things they wouldn't have thought of in the past. They went into the movies, and many of you or your kids will be familiar with the Lego films. They started making a number of computer games. They brought out film franchises, so they honed down on the things that people wanted, like Star Wars Lego or Harry Potter Lego. And suddenly the brand was reinvented and has been incredibly successful as a result. So really interesting things there, and I'm sure you'll think of your own examples. Again, I want to just put it to you, do you think your organization has that ability to respond? So we're going to put the poll back up, and you can consider, does your business have the agility within your people, process, and technology to respond to a disaster or an opportunity when required? And just as we're talking there, the final point in the slide there was about we often encourage our clients to put themselves in the customer's shoes when they think about this, because actually that's got to be the firm driving point of why you would change direction. Of course, there might be an unforeseen situation, but actually, do your customers want more? Do they want something different? And that might be how we can capitalize an opportunity and put them at the center of your strategy. So that's great. 15 responses so far. Keep them coming in if you've not there. For those, there's a few more that's joined. We're up to 39. We're doing a few polls just to see how resilient our organization is. So feel free to use the Slido link there or the QR code just to benchmark where you are. Okay, I'm going to show the results. Okay, we're doing pretty well on these first two. 56%, that's agrees. So that's actually more than we had on the protect, but we do have a few, obviously, in the disagree category there. We'll just keep that live if anybody wants to add in a few other points. And you can see this picture building up that maybe we're not as we don't have the same level of focus on all of these quadrants. So we've done 2 of our 4 so far. Right, I'll bring the results down there, and you can we'll go on to the next one. Optimize, we're in the top left of the quadrant here, which is doing things differently, maybe better, faster, quicker. So the question here that will come up in a minute is, do you optimize? Do you seek to increase efficiency and reduce waste in order to increase that productivity and release resources for other value-adding activities? There's a lot of schools of thought behind this. I used to consult a lot on Lean Six Sigma, ITIL, service management practices like that. And they're all designed to look at things like your processes and your technology to get them working as efficiently as possible so that then you can release resource to innovate. Examples of optimizing, I guess, let's go to the supermarket world. Lidl and Aldi. Obviously, the reason that they throw the shopping at you when you do get to the till is because they can optimize that process, getting customers through as quick as possible, and as a result, cutting costs, increasing margins, and giving the customer a lower price than perhaps their competitors. So optimize, obviously, a key component of their resilience strategy, and one that was quite disruptive in the supermarket space. You know, getting their competitors having to think about what do they do in response to that. It's also enabled not just by optimizing process, but having the right information at your fingertips to know where is the waste, where is the efficiency. And in recent times, I would point out the tools to collaborate as well. We've certainly seen many of our clients very quickly deploy things like Microsoft Teams and give their staff new ways to collaborate remotely, and some finding in the process that they can be much more efficient, certainly saving on the cost of expenses and a number of other areas, and then releasing staff to do a number of new activities, both with externals and internals. So let's go to that poll question. This is the penultimate one. Does your business optimize well? Do you seek to increase efficiency and reduce waste in order to make yourself more productive, to release resources to maybe innovate or to do new things? Maybe think about in this time how you've approached the COVID situation. Has your business been able to optimize what they're doing using things like the Office 365 platform or Teams or Zoom or other collaborative tools? I think a number have surprised themselves with how quickly they could get those services up and running. So it's absolutely be an interesting one. So we've got 10 responses. I'll put up the data here. Okay, we're doing quite well here. Lots of people agreeing. This one, interestingly, the second highest, which it hasn't been to date, is neither disagree or agree. So overall, less people saying that their business is optimized. In fact, no one saying that they strongly agree with this statement, which is quite interesting. And so, yeah, a lot of people sitting in the middle here. A third of people in the neither one or the other, which obviously means that perhaps there is room for improvement to optimize, to be more efficient, and then to release that resource, which is great. Okay, we'll take that one down. And finally, the last part of our quadrant, doing things differently, innovating. We all said that at the start on the word cloud, came through loud and clear. That premise of innovation is the best form of defense. Brewdog, a great example. Another great example, Morrisons, again, sticking with the supermarket theme. Morrisons, you might have seen recently, have moved to doing event boxes. So that when you do your online shopping, you don't have to pick all the individual products. You could get a Mother's Day box. You could get a VE Day box. You can buy a barbecue box. And it comes with about 30 ingredients in it. Morrisons know exactly what's in there, so they can buy those in bulk. They can offer them to the customer at a fixed price. So everyone's getting a better deal. And suddenly it's a new way of doing your shopping. You just say, I'm having a barbecue, I'm buying the barbecue box. A real bit of innovation in the supermarket space, I thought. But that means you've got to think about that. You've got to be ready to go to market with it. And they've diversified and got something that differentiates them. The challenge to their competitors, are they horizon scanning? Are they watching Morrison, seeing what they're doing? Are they going to take a different tact? And of course, we've talked about Brewdog as well. So we'll do our last and final poll, which in this time will be, is my business able to innovate? We enhance our products and services by developing, diversifying, channel shifting on an ongoing basis. And it's important to say this is a tech conference, that technology can often be the enabler for that innovation. Our bespoke development teams have created, I guess, bespoke products which allow our clients to do exactly what they do in an automated and a new way, maybe bringing a new customer portal to life or something like that. And technology is often a great way that we can use to innovate, diversify, and as we're seeing today, do a conference in a new way using these online platforms. So it's really interesting. So yep, let's see where people are at. We've got 10. Keep the answers coming in if you've for that final poll. So another interesting result. Half of people agree. That's interesting, but a third of people disagreeing, which again probably our strongest element for disagree. So we're starting to see paths diverge, obviously depending on your business, your sector. There's different focuses there, depending on whether you think you can innovate and whether that's the area of focus for you. So there we go, 15 people respond to there, 16. Yeah, so you can see those numbers kind of moving up and down as people consider how it fits with their business. Great, I'm going to take that one down. So basically, I put it to you then that again, thinking of this quadrant, that a resilient strategy needs to include all 4 of these components. And it's the organization that is resilient is the one that can space themselves across all 4. Now that means perhaps there's sector differences. If you're in the oil and gas sector, there's a big focus in protecting. If you're in the tech sector like Apple, you've got to innovate. But the minute you focus on one to the exclusion of the others, you start to create blind spots. And I think that's where this is a good tool for us to say, have we got all the elements in our strategy that need to be there? If we were in person, I would now get you to plot a little graph, and I'd give you a little handout and a bit of a pen to draw a little resilience quadrant. You can do this yourself in your own time using the scores that you got from those 4 questions on the back of an envelope. Draw a little resilience quadrant and plot a square roughly depicting your relative strengths and weaknesses across those 4 quadrants. And I put the question to you, where are you now? What's your focus? Is it about protecting? Is that where you're strongest? Is it adapting? Is it optimizing? Is it innovating? We saw from our results that the bottom 2 received higher scores than the top 2. So perhaps the business landscape is more defensive than progressive, giving credence to our innovation as the best form of defense. And the second question, let's say you're around about here, is where do you want to be? Perhaps when we're examining our strategy, we should be thinking, actually, I want to be more like this. I want to release that resource to innovate. Perhaps, maybe we furloughed too many staff. Maybe we could release that resource to doing new things and giving ourselves the edge when we're back to the new normal. And an interesting observation that a crisis tends to pull people into the bottom left. And so that is, I guess, something to be self-aware of, is that if you've just hunkered down, now that could be because of a pandemic, or it could be because of a cyber attack. Make sure that doesn't cloud your judgment and you suddenly then only think about one component. Hopefully that's helpful. Last section I want to cover before we pause for questions, and happy to bounce this around and share the slides afterwards and carry on the conversation, is how do we embark on that journey? Now we've had a quote from Darwin. I want to bring up a quote from Einstein. I used to be an astrophysics master student back in my time at Durham Uni, and Einstein famously said, "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution." We're very quick to solutioneer, I've always found, when engaging with organizations. But actually spending time thinking about where the gaps are, where the risk, where the opportunity is often something that can add value. And I will afterwards, but something we've just come up with it's a free giveaway. I'd give it away as a handout if we were in person, but we've come up with a bit of a resilience assessment that takes more questions than you've had in this section, so about 15 questions across those quadrants to help you consider where your organization might want to put the focus next. Because I think you've got to start thinking about the problem before we start looking at the solution. So I'll keep the SurveyMonkey link up. It'll be on the slide at the end slides as well. But there's an invitation really to go online, fill out a more detailed assessment if you have the time, and then you get a score to say, well, where are you on this resilience journey? And hopefully that insight is useful as you develop your own strategies. And of course, if there's a little box at the end, if you'd like one of the team here to create a square for you, we'll make you a resilience quadrant and we'll send it across. Then feel free to do that. I want to give a quick customer story on resilience. One of our clients, there's a case study on our website, is the People's Postcode Lottery. They're a great organisation. They've given to date over £500 million away to charities and good causes. I'm sure you're familiar with their TV and their radio ads. Great organisation, as I say, but they're a good example of where they've really lived this quadrant. So they have, just quickly moving around there, we engaged with them about 5 years ago and we helped do a lot of work on their cyber defenses. And we actually managed to get the organization ISO 27001, which looks at not just technology, but the people and the process around best practice security. Very much defending themselves and meeting requirements from their regulators. Not only that, we put in some places to build risk forums and quarterly meetings where they could change direction really quickly. And off their own back, they've set up what they call knowledge centers to change direction and make sure that they can respond to information as it comes through. They've optimized, and we ran a program with them a few years back to insource a critical application and then to move it to the cloud, in their case, AWS. And a lottery has a monthly cycle, and there's a big peak when you do a lottery draw, and so they only needed computing power in bulk for a few days of the month. So actually, the elastic computing offered by Amazon was perfect for them and able to optimize their IT estate. And all of that allowed them to innovate, creating new opportunities for players. You can create a little My account in the future, and a few other innovations that are in the pipeline that they'll announce in the future. But they're all designed to get more money going to good causes, and of course communities playing and winning together on their street prizes. So just a bit of an example. You can read a bit more of a detailed case study of them on the Waterstons website, but they're a brilliant organisation that have done a lot of good, but have also exemplified, in our view, the resilience practice on the ground. So developing your resilience program, it's going to have lots of components. It's going to have protect. So that's everything from cyber defenses, BCP, resilient supply chains, knowledge management. All these elements need to be there to do the basics right. Then we've got to adapt. Now that might mean agile leadership, being able to quickly move when we need to, considering risk and opportunity management, having the underlying IT and tech platforms to enable that adaptability. Then we've got to optimize, which means efficiency, collaborating well, maybe getting the BI and the data analytics at your fingertips to allow you to make the decisions. And again, technology being a real enabler in that world. And finally, innovating, horizon scanning, diversifying, using new technologies to go to new places and offer new services. So hopefully these are the sorts of components. It's different for every business, but in your world, hopefully you can start to see some of the areas that might be the next thing in your resilience strategy. So finally, new thinking, new opportunities, hopefully. I'm sure some of this isn't new to a lot of you. You'll be have been immersed in the topic, and it is an emerging one. There's lots of thinking and thought leadership. We're writing a few articles ourselves on it. But I put it to you that perhaps now, particularly in light of the COVID pandemic, is the time to make innovation the best form of defense. It felt like that was the slightly lower area when we looked at the scores on Slido there, in order to survive and thrive. There's the link to that benchmarking survey. We'll send it out afterwards as well. But that's a little tool to, I guess, say, well, where do you start on this journey? Maybe using that quadrant that I've shown to say, what is the most important attribute in your resilience approach? And our view is start with what's critical to your business. It's about putting your customers at the center of that thinking. What they are delighted by, what they want is often a good steer in terms of where the priority should sit. And finally, I've had got three quotes in this one. We've had Darwin, we've had Einstein. Final thought is that change is the essential process of all existence. Now, this is by another great philosopher, in this case, Spock, from Star Trek. Again, giving a really insightful adage, which I think exemplifies what's needed behind that resilient thinking. So that's me. That's my thinking on new resilience, new opportunities, and helping to survive and thrive. I think what we'll do now is we'll go over for some questions, and I think we've got about 10 minutes left. And I'll very happy to make the slides available and also continue the conversation. So please do connect on LinkedIn, dial us up on the Waterstons website, and I'd love to continue the conversations. And if please do use the free resources that are out there. But of course, if we can be helpful on that resilience journey, do let us know. Great. Okay, so I'm going to go over for questions, and I'm just having a quick look. So it's on another screen. Okay, we've got a pinned question here. How effective are threat intelligence platforms in boosting an organization's resilience to cyber threats? Oh, that's great. Well, that's right in my wheelhouse. So thanks, Dominic. So I think this is going to be critical. Just as a wider thing, Waterstons is actually building a SOC at the moment, a security operations center. So we've been doing a lot of thinking about the underlying tools. And one thing that underlines the new generation of security tooling is this threat exchange of information. So cyber resilience exemplified by getting data really quickly into your monitoring tools and your systems to be able to make decisions. I won't plug any particular product because there's lots out there in the market, but just to say that the tool that we use plugs into a threat exchange online. And we saw something really powerful the other day. The National Cybersecurity Center sent out what's called a pulse, a notification that was a new phishing campaign that was hitting clients. We then saw through that threat intelligence platform an IT network go out and connect to that IP address, and it very quickly, within 2 minutes of that notification coming out, the threat information was used to bring that up as a red flag to our security guys. Now, so that gives you an idea of the power of threat information in cyber resilience. But I would say that what we are looking for is for that information to become more and more accessible to organizations, because at the moment there is a cost in the big market, and I'm glad to say that there's a lot of new and innovative tools in the open source market coming forward for those smaller SMEs to be able to access it. So yeah, great question, Dominic. Okay, next question. Having people, process, and technology makes sense, but surely businesses also need finance to seize opportunities and adapt. Yep, Yvonne, I would absolutely agree with that. It's almost like another resource, isn't it? Like if you optimize in other areas, that will release not just people resource and technical resource, but it'll unlock finances to be able to do new things. In the service management world, we always talk to our clients, those that are familiar with ITIL, about continual improvement, which is one of the 5 life cycles in ITIL, that's often the place to start. Because if you can make incremental gains initially, you'll release not just resource, but money to be able to do the big things. So we'd absolutely agree with that. And I think when businesses look at themselves, and I think this has been a reflection in the time of COVID, we have actually been surprised with what we can achieve with a little. We have clients in London asking, do we really need those 2 London offices? That's a great expense. Maybe we could release that to get the finance back to invest it somewhere else. So I think there is a hard look at how we do that. So thanks, Fawn. I do absolutely agree that there is a financial component to this as well. No more questions at the moment. So I'll just pause just to see if there is anything anyone wants to add. If you do want to ask a question, I think we've got a couple of minutes left, then please do put it into the chat window. And of course, there is the SurveyMonkey link there. I will just put my contact details up on the screen as well, and still the SurveyMonkey link there. Feel free to connect. It'd be lovely to make some connections. I've spoken at a number of these Dynamo conferences, and it's great to engage in this more virtual sense. So you can see my page on our Waterstons website there, and my LinkedIn. And I'm afraid I don't really use Twitter, so do connect on the LinkedIn platform there. It'd be great to chat further on this evolving topic, and there is a lot of thought leadership going on here. Great, nothing at the moment. I'm just going to scan down. Oh, I've got one queued up from one of my colleagues, Andrew Gill. He said, is there a challenge in ensuring that the framing of resilience isn't just cyber related? No, it's a really good question, Andrew. It's something, and I do, you have to balance. Of course, I'm coming, my role is head of cyber resilience at Waterstons. So that is one of the main threats that is impacting the protect bubble. But it needs to go wider than that. We need to think about actually not just the cyber threat, which is significant, but actually what's happening to our supply chain. We've seen lots of organizations impacted because not that they've been impacted, but it's been their supply chain that's been impacted. I'll use the example of KFC from a few years ago. You may remember they moved their contract from their normal supplier to DHL, and suddenly KFC couldn't get the chicken in the restaurants they needed to deliver their services. That came back down to a lack of supply chain vetting and making sure that your suppliers had the resilience to enable your business to work. So I think we need to take a wide view of this topic, and our little survey tries to do that. There is a question on cyber in there, but it's one of a number of questions when we think about what needs to be in place. And I'll just take your time. I think we'll take one more last question there. Paul is asking, finance is a major issue, risk delaying projects re COVID that may expose the vulnerable, change risk appetite / security controls. Yeah, I think that challenge is absolutely warranted, Paul. I think for me, a bit like that slide where I had the crisis arrow going down to the protect, it was very easy, and in some cases absolutely the right thing to do, to furlough a large part of the workforce depending on your sector and how it's impacted your business. But perhaps I would put it that perhaps people cut too deep. And if we take out that resource that will allow us to innovate, then we're not going to give ourselves the capability to come out of this in the best way possible. What that does mean is there is a question to business leaders to say, will you be brave? Will you invest when actually the market is in decline? Because actually that bit of investment, when it's a calculated risk, might actually lead to a greater reward. So I think that needs to be exhibited at leadership level. And I would say that actually our view is that this doesn't start with technology. Of course, technology enables this stuff, but this actually starts in the boardroom. If leaders and directors of businesses exemplify resilient thinking, agile leadership, risk-taking and opportunities, then that DNA will work its way down the whole organization, and it'd be great to see more businesses, I guess, thinking about what could the future look like if we were more resilient, not just in a defensive sense, but in that proactive, opportunity-seeking sense as well. And very much in line with your question, Paul. Then hopefully, by optimizing as well, we'll release those resources to allow us to reinvest in the value-adding components. And there's more and more opportunities to do that now through technology innovations like moving to the cloud and other things that can enable that trajectory. So, no, that's great. Great, excellent. I think that's the end of the questions. And just a thanks from me. Thanks for tuning into this session. Hope you found it informative. Do connect up with me on LinkedIn or over email or via the Waterstons website. And as I say, very happy to share our thinking on this further. Great, thank you very much.